Tutors, mentors, and the city with your host.com.
The City Tutors presents
Tutors, mentors, and the city
with your host.com.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kevin.com Brown, and thank you for joining us on Tutors, Mentors, and the City. And like I do every episode, please join me in welcoming our guest for this one, Mr. Eric Benaim. Yay! Eric.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So typically my first question is, who are you? But I gotta, sometimes I do a pivot because of something that catches my eye.
Okay.
All right. So over your left shoulder, your bookshelf.
Yeah.
Your shelf.
Yeah.
It have no books on it.
I don't have any books on my bookshelf.
Your shelf is filled with interesting tchotchkes.
Yeah.
Now, are those things relevant to you, or are they just decoration?
So I collect art, and I collect art, like vinyl art toys. So there's an artist called Cause. He's a very well-known artist. And so those are like the Cause figures. So that's called Cause Companion. That's Cause BFF. So it's a bunch of these figures that he releases. He has giant 30-foot ones throughout the city, throughout the world, actually. And he has a collaboration now with Uniqlo for T-shirts and stuff like that. So he's like an artist who I love. I'm a big collector. I've always been a collector as a kid. I collected comic books and baseball cards. And as I got older and was able to afford collecting art, I got into art. And then these these art toys, basically.
Okay. Now, do those have value now, or is this like value in the future?
No, they have that. They have value now. Yeah. They have. I've done really well with them now. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay. Outstanding.
Yeah.
All right. So, for anyone that's not familiar with our podcast, I don't do research on my guests. So I do that intentionally, so I can ask questions from the perspective of an audience who may not be familiar with our guests. So that being said, Eric, who are you?
So my name is Eric Benaim. I'm a Queens boy, born and raised. My parents are immigrants. I'm first generation American. My parents immigrated here from Israel. My mom was like a homemaker, and my dad was a mechanic, and he had an auto shop as a kid in Queens. And I've just been a Queens boy. I'm the CEO of a company called ModernSpaces. We're a real estate brokerage and marketing firm based in Long Island City, Queens. But I have offices throughout Queens. I have an office in Long Island, and I have an office in Jersey City as well. We're about 100-person shop. I started the company 15 years ago. I've been in real estate for 23 years now. And so if you've been to Long Island City over the last, say, 12 years, and you've moved to Long Island City, whether you bought or you rented an apartment, there's a 70% chance you came through our door. So we work with developers. The developers usually come to us. We're not just a regular brokerage. We help you find, rent, buy a home, right? But we also work with developers on planning their building. So a developer can come to me and be like, Eric, I just bought a piece of land and I could do 200,000 square feet here. What do I do? And so I say, okay, well, if you're going to do a rental, this is how many studios, 1s, 2s, 3s. This is how big to make them. We could target this demographic. Maybe we're targeting college kids or whatever, right? If you're doing a sale, and if the condos, I would do this size, this size, this size. This is how we're going to market it. This is the amenities we're programming. So obviously, if we have a building where heavy 2s and 3s, so you're probably going to have amenities with like kids' rooms and playrooms and little things like that. Or if you could have like a wellness building, so you have more fitness, like lifestyle type thing. So we help them assemble their entire team. We bring in the architect, the interior designers, we bring in all the consultants, and then we work with them for years on planning their buildings. And then when it's complete, we staff it to either rent or sell. And then we see projects all from like conception all the way through completion and moved in, basically.
Wow, that's very impressive. CEO. Okay, as you know, or viewers might know, I did a little time in Long Island City at Silver Cup Studios.
Yep, they're friends of mine.
Okay, okay. So that's for those that don't know. I was an actor on a TV show called 30 Rock, and 30 Rock was shot at Silver Cup, and Silver Cup is in Long Island City. So I'm familiar with Silver Cup. I'm familiar with Long Island City because I had to drive through there often, to get to work for 7 years. I think we did 7 years, 7 seasons. But you said you started in 2000. You started 23 years ago. What was your motivation? Can you take us back to what was happening in your world that made you say in the year 2000, I'm going into this real estate?
So it was basically like 2001, and
2000.
prior to 2001, from about 1996 till about 2001, I was a party promoter. So I was part of the New York nightlife club land scene. I used to throw a lot of rave parties in the 90s. And then 9/11 happened, and unfortunately nobody wanted to party. And so it was kind of like it was a sad time to be like a New Yorker during that time. And so I decided to, make a career change. I thought it was going to be temporary. My father was actually the one who said, "Hey, get your real estate license," trying to push me to get my real estate license. And I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I was kind of like lost. I wanted to party, right? And I couldn't really party anymore, or didn't really feel like partying. And so I got my real estate license, thinking it was going to be for like a year or two, and then I can go back to partying. And so probably in the first 2 years, I hated it. Trying to I would do real estate and maybe get a side job at a restaurant or something like that, because I missed like the nightlife kind of like interaction. But then I kind of maybe around 2003, 2004, I started, when I was in the beginning, I was doing more rentals, and as I started doing sales, I started liking it more. And at the time I was focused only in Manhattan, and I had a niche of like the Upper West Side. And then in 2005, there was these parties that go on at MoMA PS1 in Long Island City every Saturday. There's these they were going on every Saturday, DJ day parties, and I would go to those from like 1998 when they first started. And so one day I'm at the party, and my friends were supposed to come, they didn't show up, and I was there for like an hour, and then after like an hour I was like, I'm alone, let me just like walk out, whatever. And I explored the neighborhood, Long Island City, right? And I knew it being a Queens person, but I never really explored it. And I was like, wow, this is like a cool area. I saw the Five Points building was across the street. As a young kid, I was a bad kid. I used to do graffiti also. So I used to love going seeing all the graffiti at the 5 Points. And then walking up, I see a building with like coming soon condos. I'm like, really, over here? And back then you didn't have cameras on your phones, right? And so I was like, oh, maybe I can advertise this to my clients. And so I would call myself and leave myself a voicemail, right? And be like, oh, whatever, I got the website, whatever it is, right? And I got back, I would check my voicemail and get the information. And we didn't have Zillow or StreetEasy or all the things that you have now. It was Craigslist back then, right? So it was the only way to advertise. And back then, as a real estate agent, you had to put a lot of ads. You had to do because they would always go to the bottom. So you always had to continuously put up ads that are constantly on top. And I just put one ad, the next hot neighborhood, Long Island City. And back then, you probably had to do maybe 10, 20 ads until you get like one client. This one ad, I probably got 30, 40 clients. And I was like, I got something over here, right? And so I put up another ad. I started building. Then I was like, wow, this is crazy. Started learning. I got obsessed about Long Island City, and I created like a little bit of a newsletter. And then I was keeping everybody updated on that building, getting information, keeping everybody updated. When the building opened up April 1st of 2006. So April 1st, 2006 and April 2nd, 2006. So those first 2 days, I sold 18 apartments. So that's like huge, right? I never sold so many in one shot, obviously. And I said, you know what, the hell with Manhattan. There was no real estate brokers really focusing over here. I was like, I'm going to make this like my niche. And then I ended up, there was another building. In that one building, I sold like 44 apartments. Then another building opened up, I sold like 14 apartments. I mean, back then it's like big numbers, obviously. And I was like, you know what, this is like my thing. I'm going to focus only over here. And I built like a name for myself as like the Long Island City guy. And then in 2008, I started my firm, ModernSpaces. And then since then, we've planned over 15 million square feet of residential, literally changed the skyline over here. So it's been a very exciting journey all this time.
That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I, you're a Queens guy. I'm a Bronx guy.
Okay.
And at that time, I had a comedy club. I had a comedy club in Harlem called the Uptown Comedy Club.
Mm-hmm.
And I produced the TV show out of there. My partners were the people that produced Showtime at the Apollo. We were doing our thing. And 9/11 hit. And I remember, it's comedy club. I remember not knowing if we should do a show after the horrible tragedy, right?
Yeah.
We lost so many people, so many New Yorkers, so many friends. And ultimately, that was the year after 9/11. That was the year we closed the club. We made it lasted 9 months after it because people stopped traveling. Because we were a TV show, we had a lot of tourist money. We had a lot of tourist revenue. And people were afraid to fly or the airports were shut down. And we just couldn't survive the repercussions of that horrible event.
Yeah.
I also came up as a party promoter. And I promoted parties on the Intrepid. You were talking about the Upper East Side. I promoted parties on the Intrepid, at Jacob Javits Center, at the Tunnel, all those places that. Yeah. But I'm not in the rave scene, right? I knew the rave scene was hot, but I was in the hip hop scene. I was in the hip hop scene. So it was two different worlds, right?
I had some hip hop DJ. I had a DJ Hurricane, who was the DJ for the Beastie Boys. I had him DJ for me once. So I had a few DJs, hip hop DJs spin for me.
Well, tell us about the rave scene. What was that like? What was because I all I knew was heard about it, but I've never been.
So I started getting into raves. I was like 16 years old in 2005. And you know what? Back then it was like underground kind of scene. Now it's like you have festivals with like hundreds of thousands of people. And back then it was like we used to go to this weekly party called it used to be NASA, which was made famous at the movie Kids, that famous movie. Yeah. And then it turned into Home, and then that party turned into Flux. But it was at Club Vinyl at 157 Hudson Street in Tribeca. I used to go there like every Friday, and then we'd go to different parties everywhere. And then in 2006, I was like, I want to kind of like be a promoter. And so I first started helping a promoter at the Tunnel, promoting for this guy, I forgot his name. And then I did what we used to call back then an outlaw party. So an outlaw party was an illegal party in an illegal location that you just broke into, and nobody knew about it until that day. And so I identified the location, and it was an abandoned monastery in Staten Island. And so I had 500 people come. It wasn't really to make money. It was more to like get my name out there. And that was fun. And then there was a big rave party at Roseland Ballroom. It was a series called the Monkey Parties, Brass Monkey, Monkey Business, all these different parties. And it was like 4,000 people. So I had like become friends with the promoters, and I was like, let me get the official after party. And there was a club back then called Planet 28. And so I did the official after party at Planet 28. And I remember coming home probably 9 o'clock in the morning. I had made like $5,000 from the party. I was like, I had cash. Like I just threw the cash, $5,000 in cash. I'm like, this is what I want to do in my life, right? And then I started building up and doing more parties. My biggest party had 11,000 people. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot different scene. Now it's like crazy, right? But it was fun because I'm friends still with a lot of the people from back then, and some of them became big. Like one of the ones who I knew back then are the people who do electric zoo, right? Which is like major, right? And then some of them still do some parties. Some of them just do other careers, have just had other careers. But it's like one thing that kind of like unified us. What I loved about the rave scene is that it was accepting of people, no matter who you were, what you were, what you liked, who you liked, right? It didn't really matter. And so, I mean, now you see people with purple hair and they're like, oh, back to, like, all right, we 20, 30 years ago, right? It's people with piercings everywhere. I was like, all right. Now it's like normal to see it. I think back then it was more exciting to have friends when it was like, wow, and people would look at you like, who are you, right? But it was fun. Now it's just like the norm. It's part of like regular like society. Back then it was like I think people were pushing the envelope with just the way they expressed themselves, right? Whether it was fashion or even like bodily stuff, right? And it was just like it was welcome. You know, they used to have a saying that everybody used to talk about called PLUR. PLUR stood for peace, love, unity, and respect, right? So if we all lived with PLUR, I think we'd be a great society.
Well, I tell you, I just had a meeting. I just became an adjunct professor at Hunter, right? But I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I did the promotion scene. The thing I did on the Intrepid, I walked out of there with so much cash. We didn't even have bags enough to carry the cash, right?
Yeah.
So you know what that's like. I sent my guys, party's over, it's early in the morning, and the rats come out by the water early in the morning. They're hungry. And I would send my guys out to see if there were bags, plastic bags blowing in the wind, just so we could carry all this cash we just made the night before, right? We got $100,000 in cash, and I'm 25 years old, 26 years old. So that's what the party world was. But I talked to these academics, and I let them know how the bureaucracy in academia to give these kids an education, right? So I'm talking to one of the directors, and by the time we talked for 15 minutes, and he said, Kevin, you need to send me your resume. I need you teaching at this school. I wasn't looking for a job. I'm brand new. Like, I've only been teaching for 4 weeks. But even though I'm a student now, I'm going for my master's. I didn't get hired from my educational skills. I got hired from my entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah.
And as I listen to you talk, if I was a director of a college right now, I would say, yo, Eric, man, you need to send me your resume. I need to get you teaching these students here, because the skills you learned, right? The skills you learned from being that young promoter, the creativity, the outside the boxness. Can you speak about the skills you learned that you transferred to your success?
Yeah, so I mean, you really. So I didn't go to college. I actually also dropped out of high school. But I had, like, I guess, street skills, and I think I believe. Do I wish I went to college? Yeah, I wish I would have had other skills that you learn from college, right? But if I would have went to college, would I have had the skills now? I don't know. So I would love to get to have some skills that I wish I had now, which I don't, right? Probably the only way to get them is from college, like real, like true economic, financial type skills, right? But you learn on your way. I'm a person who, I'm not shy. I don't have too much pride where I won't ask a question, and I always ask questions, right? I don't care who it is. I ask, please explain it to me. I'm not embarrassed to ask and get really a definition. If I don't understand, please explain it to me again, right? Like, I didn't get it. Can you, even if they say a word, I don't understand what that word meant. What does that mean exactly? Right. So I'm not shy about that. And that's kind of like, I think, very important in the world. But back then, I think what's different back then than I think now it's so easy because of social media and like all the different things. Back then we had to like actually have like real flyers, like printed flyers. And I would travel tri-state. I go to Connecticut, I go to New Jersey, I went to DC. We'd go everywhere to try to get as many people. If there was a big party in DC, I remember going to a big party at the Armory in DC because it was gonna be like 10,000 people. I was like, all right, maybe when you go over there, 5-hour trip or whatever, and then whatever. I'd go to like Club Shampoo in Philadelphia, and all these different like places all over to try to like promote and try to get people until you learn more like street skills. You also you have a little bit more guard because you don't know what the other person is thinking or doing, right? And we had like I had a lot of friends in the scene, but once you were in the business of the throwing parties, you're friendly with people, but there's also probably like animosity and jealousy or whatever. I had one party that I know another promoter probably called and had me shut down, right? And I lost like $80,000 in that party, right? And I had the feeling, I was like, oh, I heard like little whispers about it. So you have to know how to have your guard up all the time, and you just learn actual real skills. There's only so many skills you learn in school, but if you don't apply them in the real world, it's kind of like hard. I hire people here we have 100 people, right? And a lot of times we get people. We have we do interns, right? We're not really big on interns. We probably do maybe like 4 or 5 interns a year, right? We're not like we focus on interns. But out of those 4 or 5 interns, probably almost every year I'll hire one, right? Or that one will approach me and we want like a full job. And I love giving those kids jobs. But also a lot of times people are like, they're not really understanding. I think the different generation, so I'm 45, right? So I think the different generation now, when they're in school so much, they don't really understand. It's really, really, you get out of school, you got to work hard. And that's what people want at the end of the day. Is even if you don't understand, it's fine. I'd rather have somebody here not come in with a chip on their shoulder that they know everything because they learned it off a book, and rather somebody who kind of like, listen, I don't know this, but I'm ready to learn, right? And I appreciate that than somebody who just comes here and like they were probably who knows what they were expecting, right? Because you watch $1 Million Listing in real estate, so you think it's all like whatever. It's not really like that, right? It's a show, which is predominantly almost fake, right? But so it's not really real estate's not really like that. I don't meet people in a restaurant and make the deal right there, right? So but you do learn from you learn, I think, from actually doing a lot more. I think I wish in school. So I have 2 kids and they're in school, and so like my son who's 7, I'm trying to teach him the value of money. So the way I learned the value of money was collecting baseball cards and comic books. I was like huge into like collecting cards. Me and my friends, we in the 80s and early 90s, we collected like cards and comic books. And then we would trade. We'd watch the value go up, right? And we would like, oh, I got this, or maybe I'd buy a bunch of packs and get the card that I want. If I had packs extra, I'd sell them. And so I'm trying to teach my son now the value of money, right? My son's into soccer, so I get him into soccer cards, right? So we go and he opened up. He got a Messi card, like one of his first packs. He opened up. He got a Messi card. We looked it up. It was worth $200. And I was like, wow, look, you see, we paid like 5, it's worth 2. Let's put it in the case, save it. And now later on, you can save this, or you could save this for later on when you're in college or whatever, right? And just trying to teach people old school way, and kind of like how I learned, I think, real world experience.
The old school stuff is coming back. I don't know. Maybe you could speak to this. I don't know how it's affected or going to affect the real estate market, affect your industry, but AI is flipping the world upside down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the structures that people have trained for, they might become obsolete because I don't hire you to do it. I can ask AI. AI will print out a whole,
I am. So I'm kind of like against AI. So right. I'm kind of like, it's crazy, right? But like, I like support the strike that's going on right now between the writers and everything. I don't know the other issues, But I don't like the fact that the studios can just scan somebody, and so like in 50 years from now, I could see a Tom Hanks movie where he looks like he is now, right? And what if I got scanned for something, and all of a sudden I'm playing a part in something I don't believe in, right? So that's like I where I normally wouldn't take that job. They're like, no, I don't believe in that kind of thing, right? So it's like, that's what I think. That, and I'm a big I push everybody here. I'm very like, I'm an easygoing boss, but one thing I'm a little bit hard on, you got to come to the office. And so I'm a strong believer in out of sight, out of mind. And if you're not in the office, I forget you're working for me. And then if I forget you're working for me, then I realize, why do I even need you? Right. But if you're in the office, okay, I see you. Right. And maybe maybe whatever it is you do is like slow now, but you chip in and you're a good person. So you'll chip in and help in other things. Or maybe you have a brainstorm idea. We should do this, whatever. And I see you're like kind of like active. I also have a human connection with you, where even if we're slow, right? Unfortunately, big companies, they're just like, I got to wipe you out. Right. But when you work with like maybe a mid-sized company like myself, during COVID, I didn't lay off anybody. Right. Because I have like a heart, and I'm like, I didn't cut salaries or anything like that, right? Because they come, they see, I see them, and I know they have families or whatever it is like that. So I think coming into the office is really important. I think more people are using AI now because less people are coming to the office, so they have less personal connection with them. When you have more personal connection with the people you work with, you go out to drinks, or you share your life stories with them. You go to weddings or funerals or whatever, right? You have like a bond together with that person. It's kind of like hard to say I'm going to replace this person with like a robot or whatever.
Yeah.
So when you have that strong personal connection, your heart gets involved, and it's just like, I told people here in my company, I said, don't worry, I'm not going to replace you with AI. And they would joke around. They're like, okay, we want that in writing, right? But I'm like, I joke around a lot of here. Who the hell's going to laugh at my jokes, right?
Well, let's talk about something. Our biggest demographic is students in the CUNY system, right? And but we city tutors, we provide free tutoring and free mentorship to basically New Yorkers, anyone from 5 to 55, anyone from 6 to 66, on almost any subject, on almost any topic, right? So someone might reach out and say, I want to get into real estate, right? Or someone might reach out and say, I'm in real estate, but there's certain skills that I want to develop. And we can provide them with a tutor to pass the real estate exam. One of my dearest friends is trying to become a realtor, and she's been studying online, but she's challenged. It's a challenge for her, right? Because it's totally a wheelhouse. But we provide those types of services. And when you go to school in New York, you're still competing against New York. There's so many ways to make money in New York, with or without. You're one of the real life success stories of someone who says, I dropped out of college. I even dropped out of high school, right? You're one of the real life success stories. What was your most challenging moment in your journey?
I think I didn't come from a family with like connections or anything like that. In New York, a lot of people move up also because their family has connections, right? My family didn't go to Dalton or any of those schools, right? My sister's the only one who actually has a college degree. So that is one where we didn't really have any real connections, right? And trying to just like grind it. And because years ago, I was probably a little bit ashamed of telling people I dropped out of high school. Now I don't really care anymore, right? Because I kind of, in a sense, made it, right? But in the beginning, I would be like, no, I went to school, right? I would be like embarrassed to like, when I was younger, right? 15, whatever years ago, I would hide that because I would be like, oh, how would they look at me? But I think the challenge is when you have no connections, especially if you're like a first generation, an immigrant or a first generation American, or just don't have the means, right? You grew up without any means. I think you know, my father used to really push me for real estate, and he used to say to me, and then he owned his gas station, and he built a name for himself as like a good mechanic, honest mechanic, and all that stuff. And he used to say to me, he's like, Eric, he's like, in real estate, they say location, 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 but it's also reputation, reputation, reputation. And those words I actually say to everybody who comes into our doors. I kind of like echo the same words my dad says to me when somebody starts here. And I'm like, really, it's about your like reputation, reputation, reputation. So if you have no connections or anything, just do, and don't look, you know, unfortunately, 99% of people who are in real estate, they're looking about what am I getting my commission right now, and as soon as I get my commission, I'm gonna go buy me a nice Rolex or a suit or whatever, right? Don't do that. Just focus on, you know, if you don't focus on what you're gonna get now and really look long term. Hey, this person who I'm helping out right now, oh, they're a lawyer, or they work as a hedge fund person or whatever, right? Or they work for Facebook or whatever. They might have other friends in their sphere circle. Let me do really good by them. And maybe I don't really care that much about my commission with them, but I'll do so good by them that they're going to recommend to me all the people that they know, right? And that's how it kind of like mushrooms, and it grows from there. When you do something good and you leave like a mark with somebody, wow. Like I've done stuff in the beginning, I just have to get paid zero, and I got paid zero because I said, you know what, I'm more the commission, although it probably would have been really important for me at that time, the relationships that this person had was more important, and I saw more value in that. And if I said to the person, and maybe that commission didn't mean anything to the guy, the 5,000 or 10,000, whatever it is the person was going to pay, it could have been peanuts to the person, right? But that person saw, wow, this guy like really coming up, and he's doing this for me for free. I'm going to send him like clients. He's a really good guy and stuff like that. That's actually happened with Silver Cup. We worked with Silver Cup on a project. They were with a different company. They built a project over here with a different company. The company didn't really sell anything in a year. Silver Cup came to us, and I was really like direct and upfront with them. And I always admired Silver Cup being from Queens. You always see the Silver Cup sign. And I said, I'm really going to do good by them. And I did good. We hit it out of the park. It was a home run. And to this day, they constantly send people. It doesn't even have to be Long Island City. They'll send people anywhere, right? Eric is the guy, Eric is the guy, Eric is the guy, right? Because I left a good mark with them. And that's really important. So if you don't come from anything, make sure you leave a really good impression with somebody. And especially if you're able to work with a client or anybody who, you know, now it's easy. You look people up very easily and you see who they're connected to or whatever. But if you're able, you ask around, or you find out, or you just like through conversation, oh, I work in here. Oh yeah, really? What do you do? Who do you work? Oh, I work with this. Oh, you learn about them as you're working with them, and you're like, wow, this person is really connected. I'm not connected, but this person is really connected. Let me do really good by this person, and hopefully they'll share some of their connections with me. And if you do a bunch of those, right, your sphere of influence really grows, and that's really important. And that's kind of like what helped me, right? Again, I dropped out of 10th grade, right? So I dropped out of 10th grade. I had no like real high school. If I dropped out of 10th grade, it means my education level is really 9th, right? So I had no high school education, definitely no college education, and my parents weren't like academics or anything like that. They were like blue collar people, right? And so we didn't have any connections or anything like that. But I just grinded it and you see something and you go after it and you try to be a good person, and that's basically it.
Very, very well stated, man. So you know, we're both from the Dropout Club, right? And it was one of those things where career wise, I had no reason to go back career wise. You know, I got on this successful TV show. We won all kinds of Emmys out of Silver Cup, and but I promised my mother when I dropped out of college, I promised my mother I'd go back one day. When she passed away, I realized I didn't honor the promise. So I had to go back, right? All of a sudden, that 33 years later, honoring that promise to my dearly departed mom was the most important thing I ever had to do, right? But it wasn't because, I was down and out and I better go back to school to save my, it wasn't anything like that. But there's a skill, there's a skill that you get doing those things we did, right? Those things that typically aren't taught in a textbook, typically aren't taught in the institutions of academia. But let's talk about this. You dropped out of 10th grade and you still got advice from your dad, right?
Yeah.
So your dad is the one that said, "Hey, son, get your real estate license." Did your whatever that was happening in your life that made you drop out, that didn't cause a irreparable damage between you and Pops?
Oh yeah, no, it did. My dad was old school. You either go to school or you work in this house. One or the other. You don't sit home doing nothing, right? So when I dropped out, I got a job at they don't exist anymore. TCBY. It was like a frozen yogurt place, right?
Oh,
and
yes.
and so I got a job at a TCBY. And then from there, I kind of I had work friends because I didn't really have school friends because I dropped out of school, but I had work friends, and then through those work friends, I got introduced to the rave scene, and so then I kind of I thought the party scene was going to be my career, and I thought I was going to do this for I thought I was going to do parties for forever, right? I mean, it was exciting and stuff like that. I thought I was going to do really parties forever. I didn't think I was going to get into real estate at all. I couldn't have even pictured me here today back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, what do you call it? And my dad wasn't really happy with me doing the parties at all. A lot of times I remember coming back late. The parties were ended late. We're going to go party and then an after party.
Right.
I'd make sure not to go home while his car was there. I make sure to go home after his car left, because my mom, being like most moms, was protecting the kid and all right, I'm not going to tell your dad or whatever kind of thing. But yeah, it's, what do you call it? I think when I got into real estate, he kind of he was more happy and comfortable with my decision.
Now, what did he say? Did y'all have a conversation when you started winning, in real estate? When you started noticeably winning, what happened then?
As I said, my dad was very hard on me. My dad was my dad's not doing well right now. So my dad was an ex-commando paratrooper, hardcore military guy. So I grew up very like that kind of thing. When I threw my first party, I asked my dad to come help him out. Back then I weighed 100 pounds, right? T-shirts would come up to here because the sleeves were too long. And so my dad came and he kind of was watching, because I was a little bit nervous. I'm going to be dealing with a lot of cash, whatever. My dad, it was the first time that night, was the first time, this is in 1996. It was the first night my dad told me he was proud of me, because he was shocked that I had 3,000 people come. He was shocked that he saw me running around. He's I couldn't believe you're my son, right? But I think when I got into real estate and when he saw that I was doing whatever I was doing, I ever tell him anytime I did a deal, I was always kind of telling him. But when I opened up my first place, and when I opened up my company and I had my first office, and he came to visit me and he saw me in the back desk, walked all the way to the back. He's I'm very proud of you. It was actually a very good feeling.
Outstanding, man.
Yeah.
You have such a wealth of real life experiences, that you learned on the front line.
Yeah.
Sometimes as I walk through school, because I'm a student right now. I'm trying to finish a master's now, but it's because I enjoy the learning. My major is Black Studies, Africana Studies, so I'm a scholar in that. But learning about my people is rewarding for me, right? Personally rewarding. But I walk around and I watch these young students who are brilliant, right? They're getting all A's, they're making the dean's list, but they have done nothing in the world, right?
Yeah.
And I look at them and I look at how confident they are, how arrogant they are, how much empathy they lack. And I look at them and I say, in the real world, you can do everything right and everything still go wrong, right?
Yeah.
You guys, they've accomplished nothing. Like if they come out into the real world, a lot of people will eat their breakfast, right? Eat them for breakfast.
Yeah.
The skills you have, the skills you developed through your on the front lines training can be so invaluable when merged with these young people that cater to that come to City Tutors. I am so pleased we got a chance to talk to you.
Thank you.
So so thankful for your time. So thankful for your insight. Because man, they just don't know. When you're young, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Right? Yep.
So I definitely appreciate that. Now let's talk about some of your hobbies, some of your side hobbies.
Okay.
When did you get into the you had mentioned art and you mentioned collecting. When did you get into those things?
I mean, collecting, I was just, as a little kid, I was kind of like collecting cards and comic books. And then I used to love going to like flea markets and garage sales all the time and just like kind of like treasure hunting.
Yes.
And you always kind of like find things or whatever. And then so when I used to throw parties, we used to make really beautiful flyers, like beautifully printed on like beautiful like magazine type paper or beautiful like brochure type paper, and we'd get graphic designers to design them, and that kind of it was like a piece of art, right? And so that kind of like opened my eyes to like art, and then probably in maybe like early 2000s I started getting into art because I always appreciated art. And so as I mentioned, when I was like 13, 14, 15, I used to do graffiti, right? So I used to go out, do a lot of graffiti. So, I wasn't like a wild style guy. I was more of like going and getting as many ups as possible. So just going really quick and doing whatever you could. And so that whole aspect of the art kind of like, it always kind of like just appealed to me. And so I got into art, and so I started getting into like street art, like artists like Banksy and a lot of different artists like that. And then Cause, who was a graffiti artist, who then became a fine artist, and then he does like these characters that I mentioned. And it's just fun to collect. It's just like a hobby. It's like a big hobby of mine. Excuse me. And it's just like something really fun to collect. And I collect all kinds of. The other side of the wall, I collect all these collabs with cereal boxes. So I have like Supreme did a collab, 2 collabs at Wheaties. I have that. Caused it some collabs at cereals, a bunch of different cool like cereal box collabs, so things like that. When Supreme has like various little drops, I'll try to get some of those. It's just fun, like street stuff that I kind of like, and it kind of like it's a connection for me and like my I guess my teenage years, right? Because back then I used to collect all the flyers, even from anybody. It wasn't mine, whatever it was, right? So tunnel flyers or Ray flyers or Limelight flyers or whatever. I have like drums full of these like flyers and like storage.
Really?
Right? Yeah, I used to love it. And I went through them actually like maybe a couple months ago, and it brings back memories. It's great, right? So, and you remember, I remember that DJ. I like this design. I remember they did this crazy thing or whatever, right? And so kind of like it's a way for me to like grow that love and passion of mine into a new kind of hobby. And I'm happy because my son, I'm getting into like cards. So I got into a little bit of comic books, and he likes soccer, so we collect soccer cards. And like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, he goes to me, he's like, "Daddy, I want to start collecting other things." And I was like, "Really? What do you want?" So I kind of like that, right? Because I want to like take him to like flea markets or garage sales or whatever kind of thing. And you just find cool things to collect.
That bonding is everything. So do you ever get, now that you're in real estate, do you ever get a inkling? Do you ever get inspired to take one of those spaces and just throw a quick rave? I
do. We do a lot of parties. So we do a lot of like opening parties. So I'd like to say that our opening parties for these buildings are probably the most interesting ones, right? So we did one of the first ones we did was one of the first big ones we did was 2009. The developer was a Hasidic guy who was developing it, but he was a very open-minded guy. And so I said we were gonna. He gave us a small budget to stage the apartments, and I'm like, I really can't do it. So I called one of my friends from the rave scene, who's part of an art collective, and she's like, oh, I have these people who make furniture out of garbage. I'm like, all right, let's do it, right? So we brought in Stasia with this furniture made out of like upcycled, I guess you would call it now, right?
Yeah.
Then I did a big party on the roof, and we try to usually bring like other entertaining besides DJs to make it a little more fun. That party, we turned one of the bedrooms, we had like an art installation on the wall, and we charged people who came to the party. We called the person who was sitting behind the desk an art prostitute, and people had to pay her $1, and she would have a conversation with you about art. And so it was very interesting, right? We had this other group of people. They wear these like bandanas, and they're covered, and they wear these red wigs, and they're called the bumpies. And so it's a guy and a girl, and they're sitting down with typewriters, and there's people lined up, and they just type up what they think your personality is into like an index card, right? So we try to I do different types of parties now, but we always try to add something a little fun to give it a little flavor.
Well, listen, let me add something. Let me throw something in. Let me make my pitch.
Okay.
The class that I'm teaching is called Arts in New York City, right?
Oh, okay.
And my students are all scholarship students. They spent their young lives in libraries and STEM, their science, technology, just those brilliant kids from around the best and the brightest minds from the high schools in the city.
Uh-huh.
But our worlds they know nothing about, right? And the course is designed to get them to experience the things that you and I grew up off of that we consume. I would love it if you would just give some thought when you're doing these, these collaborations of these creative minds. Make a few tickets available for the young academics, right? For these
would love to have that,
because the kids that are my students, they're all pre-med, like they're on the track to be doctors, right? But they run into those moments, those pivot moments where you're a senior, you're a junior, and then you realize this isn't for me. I want to do something else, right? And we represent the conversation we're having is the manifestation of the something else. The manifestation of what do you do when you change your mind? What do you do when your heart leads you another direction, right? You don't have to feel like a failure. You don't have to run and hide. Embrace it. There are super success stories like yourself, and the skill sets you have, the instincts you have, right? Because the stories you just shared with us, you were riding on instinct. You were riding on personality. You were riding on something. There was a shining star. There was a spotlight just shined on you your whole life, but you could have ignored it, right? You could have absolutely ignored it and been one of the other stories.
Yeah.
Right. So if when you're doing these events, I would love it if you keep us in mind, if you keep City Tutors in mind.
I would love to invite you guys over.
Man, I think if our students got a chance to meet you and pick your brain, I'm talking about the City Tutors ecosystem, right? Because, and again, I mentioned one of the things, I don't know if I mentioned it. I mentioned AI because a lot of students who were on one trajectory, AI may have shut down their trajectory. We just don't know it yet, right?
Yeah.
We don't know it. I heard on the news yesterday that the Writers Guild, they have successful negotiations, and
good.
Strike might be ending soon. I heard that yesterday.
Good.
As anybody might know, I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild. We're on strike also.
Yeah.
And I watch movies. I watch so many movies where you can tell when I saw a movie with Idris Elba and a lion. He was fighting a lion, and the lion jumped on him and grabbed him, and I was like, that's got to be AI. Like you can tell. but yeah, this is it's AI is fascinating, but it's dangerous to our future, right? It's
Yeah,
dangerous.
I mean,
Don't know.
the guy who did the Terminator movies, he came out. He says, I tried to warn you."
Yes, yes. But I would love it, man. I know you're very busy. I know you're very powerful sitting over there in Queens on your empire and kind of stuff. But I would love it if you can give some thought, because the young people, right? There is no success without successors. You
Yeah.
know that you're training your son, right? You're training your sons. That's dad's dream, to get your son to want to follow in your footsteps. That's everything. But then, like even with your story, you and your pop, you ran into some things, but it turned out to be great. And I heard you mention that he wasn't doing well right now. God bless him, whatever the circumstances. God bless. But yeah, man, I would love it if we can figure out something where we can connect, where city tutors and our demographic of young people can connect and get access to the mind of a success story like yours. That would be so exciting.
Well, I would love to invite next time we do an event. Happy to invite you, all of you guys. And if anybody wants to do like a tour of Long Island City, see some great like high rise, super expensive apartments, and just tour the area, I'm happy to give that tour. Anything else, I'm happy to be there, basically.
Dude, I'm sending my students to the Brooklyn libraries because they have this Jay-Z exhibit, right?
I saw that. I haven't had a chance to go.
We just talked about it yesterday. There's 13 versions of library cards.
Uh-huh.
And you have to go to different libraries to get them in Brooklyn. So one of the assignments is a scavenger hunt. You got to go to and get all 13 and take a picture of yourselves outside of the library and the whole 9 yards. But I'm from hip hop. You're from the rave world, right? But we had no idea back then that the things we loved as young men would turn into global phenomena.
Oh no! I mean, I grew up with hip hop. I grew up. Don't want to offend anybody, but today's hip hop is not hip hop. I mean, Nas and Mobb Deep and Wu-Tang and no, that is like real hip hop. Okay. Right. So I grew up with all that real like hip hop basically. But yeah, it's like, I mean, and you mentioned the Brooklyn Museum, but if you go to the Brooklyn Library, but if you go to the Brooklyn Museum, so in the entrance of the Brooklyn Museum, there's a 30-foot cause over there. You can see, FYI. Yeah, they bought one a few years ago, and it's literally at the entrance. You'll see it's like a big one with like a 15-foot one, so it's two of them, basically over there. But yeah, we grew up. I have a project manager over here who I think she's in her mid-30s, and I'll share stories with her, and she'll tell me, she's like, you grew up in such a really cool time. And we grew up like the 80s and early to mid-90s was a really incredible time.
Yeah. Well, I want to tap into your giving side, your altruistic side, man, because I don't want you to hoard all these instincts, all this knowledge you have. I don't want you to hoard it, right? I feel so rewarded getting an opportunity to share with these students something they'll never be able to learn in a class, right?
Yeah.
So as I create the pipeline, one of my dreams, I guess, is to create the pipeline between the worlds you and I grew up in and that academic world that's so closed, that built so many roadblocks, and they're still doing it the same old way. These old school institutions that just don't get it. They don't quite get it, right? So if we can build on the pipeline, man, I would be so honored to connect the dots between you and these young people. That would be. I'm excited now. I never know who I'm meeting and how I'm going to react to the conversation. But I am so honored to have met you, man.
Likewise. Thank you.
With a great conversation. One of my top 5 interviews.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I really
thank you for having me, and I'm an open book, so any kind of way you want to see collaboration or anything, let me know. I'm happy to work out with work something out with your students, visit or I go over there, whatever it is. Let me know. Happy to do something.
Great. Okay, so my closing question to you, first of all, thank you for your time. Closing question. Did we leave anything out, or is there anything you want to share before we
go? I'll share this. When you come from when you come from limited opportunities, don't say no. Don't put your ego aside, put your pride aside, and don't say no. I had somebody offer me something recently. I didn't really know much about it, but I said, yeah, I'll do it, because you never know what it's gonna be, right? And so you have to be very open-minded, even if it's something in a different industry, right? You never know where that door is going to lead. And because especially for a person who comes from not that many connections or not anything, right? So any opportunity that comes my door, whether it's something that appeals to me now or not, because maybe it'll appeal to me later on, right? Always say yes, always take a meeting, right? And you never know where that meeting's going to be. And so that's my closing statement.
Well, very well said. And on that note, thank you so much, Eric. It was a pleasure meeting you. I hope we get a chance to collaborate on something and talk again. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.